Hey guys, this is Jeff Stanek with Figured Out Baseball. We've got a great Figured Out Baseball podcast for you today. We're being joined by a name that if you pay any attention to Major League Baseball, you know who he is. We're being joined by Cedric Mullins, an all-star center fielder for the Baltimore Orioles. Really pleased to have Cedric on the podcast today. He's someone that I've known for quite a while, which hopefully we'll get into in the podcast. But I'll give you a quick background on Cedric before we jump into questions and have a bit of a conversation with him. He's originally from Snellville, Georgia. He played collegiately at Louisburg College, a junior college in North Carolina. He was there in 2013 and 14. Had a good 2-year career there. Then went on to play at Campbell University, a Division I school in North Carolina. He was there for 1 year. As a junior, he was drafted by the Baltimore Orioles in the 13th round. Again, that was in 2015. Spent only a couple years in the minor leagues. Then on August 10th, 2018, he got his first call up to the major leagues. Had some ups and downs in between, but 2021 was an unbelievable year for him. He became the first player in Baltimore Orioles history to have a 30-30 season, which is why you hopefully know who he is. He was an all-star, recently named a Silver Slugger for 2021 in the outfield. Cedric, I certainly appreciate you coming on the podcast with me today.
That's no problem, Jeff. I thank you for having me.
So typically I'll start with something from the bio that stands out for guys. But for you, I think we need to dive a little bit deeper than the bio and go into – I'd like to kind of start with where you were entering the 2021 season. Without going into a lot of detail, there were definitely some ups and downs. For you in 2018, you had a really good stretch in AA, and then a good, if not great, stretch in AAA. Then you got up to the big leagues and had a really respectable 45-game stretch there for the big leagues at 23 years old. Then in 2019, you broke camp as the starting center fielder and leadoff hitter, and it certainly did not go as you had planned. Then 2020, you out of the 60 games the Orioles played, you played 48 games in the big leagues and had a good year again. But I think there are probably a lot of question marks, maybe not for you personally, but for for what the media was saying or what the team was expecting coming into 2021. But I'd like to get into your head a little bit and start with the 2020 offseason going into 2020 spring training, and kind of see where you were, things that you were thinking, things that you were kind of expecting from yourself going into the 2021 season.
Yeah, so coming off of the 2020 season, I was happy that we even got those 60 games in. I know it was just a crazy time for everybody, and it was opportunity that I definitely wanted to have for that season that was provided, and I was able to kind of hold my ground during that small stretch and kind of build off of that. And then once I went to the off season, the goal for me at that point was to find a way to become a starter. And if you look at all the media that kind of led up to that point, and looking at the numbers as well, the biggest hindrance that majority of people would point out was my switch hitting. And it was also something that I had thought of not doing going into the 2019 season as well. I brought it up to the front office, the manager, GM, and so we had discussions about it. And then going into 2021, we finally, decided to go ahead and pursue just being a left-handed hitter. Looking back at my numbers, I was always right around a 300 hitter batting from the left side. Like from the minor leagues up, it was just something that was just so, it stood out so much that I felt like the change was necessary to take my game to the next level. And so the work that I put in during that offseason was solely dedicated to how do I hit left on left pitching, something I haven't done in roughly 10 years. So it was definitely interesting, but I was fully committed to it, which means there was nothing holding me back from doing it. And the confidence that was built from that, definitely led into the season itself.
I know it must have been a lot different. I'm sure that you did a lot of things in the off season. I'm assuming that you found a way to hit some velocity left on left, whether it was machine or whether you had guys thrown to you. Did you have any idea going into the season that you would have the kind of success? Did you think you were set up to have the kind of left on left success that you had? Because obviously it surprised a lot of other people, people probably outside of your coaching staff. What did you expect from yourself left on left in this 2021 season?
Honestly, I truly expected for there to be a learning curve involved, which even with the success I had, there still was. But I think just the stuff that I did in the off season, like you said, I was able to face a few guys with some velo, but it wasn't that many at bats. I was mostly doing machine, and at that point, it was just my mindset of me knowing the worst thing that could happen is that I do the exact same thing from my right side. Like that was kind of my mindset, and then I was like, but at the same time, this is my better swing, so there's more room for error in that sense. So I truly was saying to myself, it can't be any worse, and with that kind of let it be what it is mindset, it kind of freed me up a little bit as a hitter, and the outcome of it was amazing. Like, no complaints on my end. It's just a matter of continuing to get better.
So I'm going to go all the way back to fall 2011, spring 2012, which is when I first met Cedric. I'm not going to say that I discovered you or anything, but I certainly I got a chance to scout Cedric when he was in high school, and I had the opportunity to sign Cedric to Louisburg. I was the coach that had seen him play and signed with Louisburg, even though I didn't get a chance to coach him. I left Louisburg the year that Cedric went there. But I wish I could find my scouting report from you in high school, because your high school situation is really unique and interesting. I'd love for you to talk about that in a minute as well. But what I remember about you was thinking how raw your right-handed swing looked, and you looked a lot more polished left-handed, but I certainly thought you had a chance to switch hit. And if you're going to be a switch hitter, obviously you want your stronger side to be the left side, because that's where most of your bats are going to come. But I'd like to ask you about the switch hitting part, and maybe if you have any suggestions for a younger player out there who wants to switch hit or maybe just started switch hitting. If you could go back, would you do anything different? Would you start switch hitting at an earlier age? Would you take more reps that way? Or would you, if you could go back and tell yourself as a young player, hey man, just stay as a left-handed hitter only? I'm curious to know if you had a chance to go back and talk to your younger self, if there's anything that you would change about the switch hitting that you did.
Yeah, I think starting at an earlier age is probably more important, because you allow yourself to get those reps as you progress in your young career. But at the same time, for me, if I were to go back to my younger self at when I did start, I'd tell myself to continue to pursue it. It was you just gotta. The work that I put in, I'd tell myself to put in 4 times as much. And if I truly wanted to, have success on both sides, because there were flashes of me being able to have that consistent success. It just didn't stick, and it never stuck long enough to put together a full season from the right side. So in terms of advice, I definitely continue to tell myself to pursue it, and that would be it. I wouldn't tell my future self, there might be a day where you no longer do it, because then that kind of takes away from the effort portion. So that'd probably be about it.
I have a little boy, and I talk about him sometimes on the podcast, but he'll be 5 in February. But I know this is strange to talk about, but he kind of naturally switch hits. Not that he's particularly good from either side, but he likes to hit from both sides of the plate. And, I often wonder part of me wonders if I should discourage it, because he's a natural, he does everything else right-handed, but I actually think his left-handed swing is a little bit better. But part of me wonders if because he's a naturally dominant, his dominant side is his right side, like if I should just let him hit right only. But I don't know. It's something that obviously we'll have to play out, but I thought it'd be an interesting question to ask you. Going back to those high school days, though, Cedric, you have a very interesting story. I saw somebody post this past year on Twitter, kind of as one of those like underdog stories that Cedric Mullins was a bench player in high school until his senior year. And I felt like I had to chime in on that and give a little more clarity to that. But that's when you and I first met, was the fall of your senior year. You were playing at a tournament in Cary, North Carolina at Team USA Complex. You came from a really, really good high school, and you guys were playing there the first time that I saw you. And if I'm not mistaken, you had reached out to me before that, and that was the only reason that I came to see you. But can you tell people, maybe you've done this before in other interviews and stuff, but I'd love for you to tell people what your real situation was as you explained it to me, way back when, your situation in high school and why it took so long for you to get a real shot even in high school to play.
Yeah, so the me not starting until senior year is kind of skewed in a sense that people don't think I started at all on any team up until my senior year. I was a starter as a freshman. I was a starter on the JV team as a sophomore. Going into my junior year, first making the varsity team is when I wasn't. We had a lot of guys on the team, a lot of talent on the team as well. And, at the time, the head coach felt that it was better for me to, be more of a come off the bench guy. And, even with that being my role at the time, I took it as serious as I could. Continued to work hard, continued to kind of battle for those opportunities. And going into once all those seniors left, because it's mostly seniors when I was a junior. So once all those seniors left, that's when the opportunity for me to be a starter on the varsity team finally presented itself. And like you said, I reached out to you. I reached out to a ton of schools. So at that time, your junior year as a high school student, baseball player, is kind of the core of you being looked at. It's very crucial for you to be playing as a junior, so teams can come out and see you earlier compared to your senior year, which makes it a little bit tougher. Guys are already signing their junior year to schools, and the rosters get locked up pretty quickly. So that's kind of what it was. And at the time, everyone wanted to be the huge D1 prospect coming out of high school, going to the ACC or the SEC schools. But I kind of adjusted the expectations and looked at a junior college, and my main goal at the end of the day was to get drafted and to be eligible every year starting at a junior college made the most sense to me.
And that's it may be different where you grew up, in Georgia and surrounding states. There's a lot of really good junior college baseball there. In other parts of the country, not so much. Where I'm at in Pennsylvania, the junior colleges, generally speaking, there are some that are really good, but there are a lot of them that aren't, and a lot of non-scholarship junior colleges that don't pull in an incredible amount of talent. But and also in your situation, you not being really on anybody's radar until your senior year. I remember seeing you and thinking, this guy's really good. I must be missing something. Why would he not have started last year? But you had some pretty good players in front of you in that outfield as well, right? At your high school?
Yes, we had a couple guys go to D2 schools. One guy had gotten drafted by the Cubs organization, and that's what I was sitting behind at the time. And especially in center field, the guy who got drafted to the Cubs was playing center, and that's who I was behind. So it was just a matter of waiting for my opportunity at that point.
And that happens a lot. And I still don't, I don't think that yours is the only story like that, and which is why I've always thought that junior college can be such a great option for players, and it's often overlooked as an option. And for guys that might be stuck behind some other people and not really get a chance to show what they can do until, junior or even senior year, I think junior college is such a great option for guys. And the reason that you said you wanted to go is to keep your draft eligibility open, which is for anybody that might have a chance to play I always think, why wouldn't you? I think back to Carlos Rodon. At the time, he went to NC State, and as a freshman, like he was, all world as a freshman at NC State. And there was some conversation that he might go to junior college because had he been eligible for the draft as a freshman, he would have been a first rounder. And, if your goal is to play pro ball and you have a chance to be a first rounder, you probably would want to go as early as you can. Some people want to get the education, and some people want to go to college for 3 years for that experience to feel like they're ready. But other guys, feel like they want to jump into pro ball right away. So I've always felt that way, that guys that have a chance, to be professional players and that's their goal, junior college is a really great option. When did you legitimately, now obviously you've always thought that you had a chance to play pro ball because you just told us why you went to junior college. When did you legitimately think that you had a chance to be drafted? When was the first time that like scouts talked to you and you thought, man, this could legitimately be a possibility for me?
Yeah, so there was very, very slight interest after my freshman year of college. A few questionnaires, filled them out, sent them back in, and that was really about it. And then after my sophomore year is when a lot more attention started coming around. Of course, I was still filling out the questionnaires, but then at that point there were some scouts that were coming out just to see what was going on in general with certain guys on the teams, myself included, and just being out there to watch. And it was after my sophomore year that there were real conversations that were being had, and some were interested in getting me, that year. At that point it was just the business aspect of trying to figure out my worth, and there weren't any agreements on that end, so I was perfectly comfortable with going back to school, especially at a D1, show a little more competitiveness, compared to junior college, because the competition was in and out. You'd face, a really good team, then you'd face a team that was from, way up north somewhere that hadn't even been outside in who knows how long. So that's just kind of how the mix was. From the moment that I went to Campbell was when it was way more consistent, and I was able to show, what I had on a day-to-day basis, and more scouts were coming out, and that's when the true talks of, what round are we going to take him in were being had, and that eventually led to me getting drafted. But my first true sense of this is a real possibility, I'd say, would be right after my sophomore year.
I want to jump ahead a little bit, Cedric, to when you got into the big leagues in 2018, had a pretty good stretch at the end of the year, and then 2019 broke camp. And if there's something that you don't love to talk about or whatever, you can certainly deflect this question. But in 2019, you started out very, very slowly for the team, for the Orioles, 6 for 64. Got sent down to AAA, didn't hit a whole lot there. Got sent all the way back down to AA. But then you bounced back the next year, and with no minor leagues, you were at the alternate training site. I believe there was a couple times you went up and down with the Orioles, but ended up spending 48 games with the Orioles and hit 271 overall, 723 OPS. And then obviously you did what you did in 2021. At any point, did your confidence waver after that 2018 season? I'm sorry, the 2019 season. At any point, did you waver in your confidence, or is there something else going on there that kind of contributed to those numbers? I'm kind of curious because, frankly, I don't think a lot of guys would have come back from that the way that you did. I don't think most guys would have come back, as quickly and had the success that you had so quickly after that 2019 season, bouncing back in 2020 with the big league club and putting together a pretty good year. And again, obviously we did in 2021. Can you kind of talk about that 2019 season and the off season and what you were feeling, like what you were thinking? Did you reach out to some people that kind of pointed you in the right direction or got your head in the right place? Just kind of curious what that time was like for you.
Yeah, so I guess coming off of the 2018 season to start, I had a really strong August, and then then I ended up running into the most games I've ever played as a professional baseball player, and September was very tiring for me, and I was contributing the fall off due to that, and then going into the 2019 season, had the confidence that I was going to play well to start off. My work ethic might have fell off a little bit after that season. Just, of course, playing pretty well, getting called up, everyone, wanted to talk and do this, that, and the third, family included. So it was a lot going on, and I think my focus kind of wavered for sure off of that. And then at the same time, I feel like the league adjusted to me. Like they broke down my own swing, and they figured out how to pitch to me to be successful on a continuous basis. And I had a very solid amount of struggle making that same adjustment back. And so the goal was for me to go down to AAA, get things figured out, build that confidence back up, and work my way back up to the bigs. And it just continued. Like, guys were doing the same thing, and I couldn't make the adjustment. I was working my tail off every single day in the cage, watching video, trying to figure out what's going on, and looking at my swing, just constantly trying to figure things out. And then I started pushing people to the side. I made no time for anybody. I separated myself from family, friends, everybody. Like, my relationships probably went down the drain with certain people. I just cut off so quick. And because I was just in a very bad mental state. I was like, I'm not used to having this much trouble playing this game. Everyone has moments where you're just, in a little bit of slump or a funk, but you always work your way out. And I could not work my way out. And then to be sent down to AA, just felt like the whole world was just crumbling down on top of me at that point. I'd always found success in AA, so I, kind of reflected after it happened. I said, okay, this is my opportunity to kind of take it back to square one. And at that point, I'd watched so much video of myself that I said, okay, some mechanical adjustments need to be made. And that's when I started doing the leg kick. I used to be a no stride guy, but they had really exploited that with me on the field, and I was not having success at all with it. So I had introduced a small leg kick, and that was kind of like, because I had success at the end of the year in AA, but the adjustments that I needed to make in order to be consistent with the leg kick was when that started. So when the 2020 season came around, we were finally able to put together a season. I was still making those adjustments. I started with the team, and was having much better at bats. Maybe not the success I wanted, but I felt like my at bats were way more competitive in general. And when they had sent me down, I was able to get more consistent at bats to really get a feel for what I'm trying to do at the plate. And I think I was down there for maybe a week because Austin A's ended up getting hit in the ribs that ended up fracturing one of them and took him out. So I got called up, but the confidence I had built based off of that really surged, and I was able to perform pretty solid for that year, even though it was short. And I felt like towards the end was when I was really heating up, but it was the end of the year. So I took what I did there, and I was excited for the offseason. I said, all right, now I know exactly what I'm trying to do. I feel like I've matured as a player, as a person, and on top of the fact that I know that I'm not going to be switch hitting going into the next year, it's time to put together something special. And that's exactly what I was able to do for 2021, and just looking forward to continue that.
That's amazing, and I think that there are a lot of big leaguers that have that happen where the league adjusts, and there are a lot of guys that just never kind of recover from that or never have the success again that they had early on. And what you did this past year was pretty incredible. Having a 30-30 season, 37 doubles, 175 hits, and playing 159 games, really pretty incredible. I want to talk about your swing a little bit, Cedric, and there's a lot of noise on social media, and a lot of guys that at least for guys that I follow that just argue back and forth about this or that or what's important, what's not important. there are guys that claim that every super successful player does this or does that. Can I just kind of ask about your swing a little bit? I know we don't have any visuals or anything in this, but can you talk about some things that are really important to you and the success for you to have success as an offensive player? What are some keys to maybe your swing and or your approach that lead to you having consistent success?
Yeah, so after the 2019 season, I was actually sent out to St. Louis, where I worked with a guy named Rick Strickland. He had his own facility where he was the technologically savvy guru. Like, he had all the stuff. He had K-Vest, he had Rapsodo, he had blast motion, all the above when it comes to the analytics of a swing. And the first thing that he pointed out to me was that I had a short swing that was really compact, but it was very linear in terms of approach, and that caused me to miss-hit a lot of balls compared to create an angle, not coming under the ball, because I still want to be short direct to the ball, but just how my barrel would find its way to get on plane with the pitch itself was something that we had focused on. So I told him, I was like, I've always liked doing one-handed drills because it helps me. So we were able to stick with that. And then at that point, it was just a matter of where my rotation in my body was coming into play. And with my swing being more linear, it was more of a in and out rotation instead of a through the pitcher type of rotation in my hips. And when I was able to, clean that up a little more, I was finding I was getting better numbers off of the analytics side, which, of course, build confidence, because initially I was struggling to get the numbers I wanted off of it, whether I hit the ball well or not. And it kind of took its toll on me even then. I was just coming off of a bad season, and now I can't even find success just in cage work. So just really taking my time, breaking down the numbers with his help, really helped boost that confidence and help clean up my swing a little more. And just taking what he had taught me and continuing to be in contact with him, sending the video, working on the things we had worked on, and during my free time and my cage work back at home, has definitely helped out. And I contribute a lot of my success to that. Just give me a strong foundation to build off of.
When you say your swing was linear before you went to him, again, I know we don't have a visual, but can you talk me through what you mean by that for people that might not get a great visual picture of what a linear swing looks like compared to what it looked like after you made the adjustment?
Okay, so so linear basically being, if you were to take a tabletop and literally just put your bat across it and you did your entire swing, that's how long my barrel was staying on that straight line, which would cause, balls coming down at you at an angle. And if you have that very straight bat path coming across it, you will probably end up mishitting, clipping a lot of balls, compared to if you take that same tabletop and you put a slight dip underneath it in terms of my bat path coming to the ball to create the angle to barrel it more consistently. That's kind of where I was at. I was at a very straight swing plane, and I needed a way to, without trying to lift the ball, just create that same direction except slightly underneath it.
So now when you're in the cage working, whether it's off season or in season, what are your goals when you're taking batting practice, like on rounds where you're not, the coaching staff isn't asking you to do anything in particular? Are you looking for, balls hit in a certain direction? Are you looking for balls hit at certain launch angles, meaning, you square a ball up, you want it to go, in a certain place off the cage. Like, what kind of external goals like that, if anything, do you have when you step in a cage?
Yeah, so when I step in a cage, I have this visualization of the field, and depending on what I'm working on, because I still like to hit the higher back portion of the net. That's a pure line drive with great backspin. You barreled it, it's flush, and then I also imagine the shortstop for away, because I typically only work middle away in the cage, because I feel like my body will react to the inside pitch on its own unless I'm getting jammed or something that doesn't quite feel right with the inside pitch. Then I'll work on it. But past that, it's a pure middle away approach. And with the ball towards the shortstop, I want to hit a absolute seed straight over his head towards the gap. That's my goal. Balls that tend to stay up in the air a little too long, especially opposite field, end up being caught because they don't have the same amount of push to it that a ball would when you pull it. So that's kind of my approach. And even on the field, when we're not working on something specific, I have a much easier visual of the field and of where the ball is going, of hitting that line drive over short, creating my bat angle, my bat pass, and staying inside the ball to do damage. And then when our BP thrower makes a mistake inside, I'm able to do some real damage and put it off the wall or over it.
This is something that you see debated from time to time, whether it's on social media or like when you're watching a game and you're listening to the commentators. Do you have to be able to hit major league pitching today with, how hard guys throw, how good secondary stuff is? Do you have to sit on certain pitches? Are you able to, I guess, not guessing. I think guessing is a little bit different than kind of sitting on a pitch or being prepared for certain pitches. But are you able to sort of sit on some certain pitches and react? Or are you, to have game success, do you have to, do enough homework on this pitcher to have a pretty good idea of what he's going to throw and be prepared for certain sit pitches or even sit on certain pitches? Like, how do you can you kind of talk about that a little bit, whether you need to sit on things or whether you're always kind of looking for one thing and you're able to react to something different? Kind of like you just said in the cages, you're looking for something to hit at the shortstop and you just react in. Is that basically what happens in a game as well? Or do you need to, if you're going to hit a 98 on your hands, you need to be ready for 98 on your hands? Or if you're going to hit a good, right-handed slider that's coming, down and into you, or a left-handed slider that's going low and away to you, do you need to sit on those types of pitches? Can you talk about that a little bit from this, just from your experience as a hitter? And it doesn't matter what other guys do, but what you do specifically.
Yeah, I think I was able to keep it very simple for myself. If I had never faced a guy and he, majority of guys have a really good fastball, I'm going to be fastball and adjust. I take it back to travel ball days. Like, there's a lot of guys that you've never seen before, but one thing, they have a fastball. And so I will sit fastball and adjust to the off speed that entire bat. Now, the more I face a guy, the more I have an idea of what he wants to throw me, the more at-bats I have against him, especially if I have at-bats with success behind it. There will be a moment where I can sit on a certain pitch in certain moments, in certain counts. But past that, I'm ready to hit the fastball every time.
I've wondered that myself because as a college coach, that's what you teach. But you'll hear guys that will say, well, you can't do that in the big leagues because guys throw too hard and their secondary stuff is too good. But my sort of retort to that is always, you're playing guys that are at your skill level, right? If you're a Division II player, if you're a Division II hitter, you're facing Division II pitchers. You're facing guys that are at your talent level. If you're in the big leagues, you're a big league hitter for a reason because you can still handle that. So I wondered if that stuff changed as you went up the ladder, or if that's, like you just said, basically the same approach that you had when you were in high school, college, travel ball, whatever. But it sounds like it was basically that part of it hasn't changed much.
Yeah, there are some things that you just have to keep the same. That's how you've been able to create success your entire life. It's there's certain things that don't change. Now, as you mature as a player, as a hitter, things will kind of come to your head where it's like, okay, I've seen this. I've seen how he approaches other guys. If I get in this situation, I will sit this pitch for this moment, and then I can go back and revert back to my normal approach. And that's kind of what I felt like I had picked up on as years progressed. It was, if this guy had success doing this against me, how am I going to change to combat that, to make him come back to my approach instead of staying along with his? Because one thing's for sure, if they have success doing one thing, they're not going to change. That's what makes the bigs the bigs. They're not going to turn around and make a mistake because they wanted to mix things up.
And so when you were talking earlier about the league adjusted to you, and then you didn't do a great job adjusting back to the league, which is why you had some struggles. When that starts happening, when the league starts to figure out what your strengths and weaknesses are, and they start pitching a lot more to your weaknesses, do you in general, do you have to change and start looking for things that maybe you don't do well and start trying to focus on those things more? So if I can just, I don't know if this will make sense, and maybe if I explain it a little bit better, but if you're a guy that likes to hit fastballs, right, and you start seeing a lot of right-handed changeups, for example, that are going to go away from you, and maybe that's a weakness for you. For you to be able to make an adjustment back to the league, right, and this is, they start getting you out with right-handed changeups as a left-handed only hitter. Do you then have to get better at hitting changeups, or do you have to get better at laying off of changeups and hitting fastballs in fastball counts? Do you know what I mean? Like, do you go away from your strength of hitting a fastball in order to adjust to them, or do you just kind of even get a little bit more stringent of sticking with what your strength is? Does that make sense how I'm phrasing that?
Yeah, I understand it. I think there's a little combination of both mixed in there, so it's very subtle. So, like you said, let's say it was a righty changeup, and they kept getting me out on that. Now, I'd have to look at a few things. I'd have to look at where the pitch is actually located that I'm swinging at, compared to if it's just the changeup itself. So it's like, okay, if I'm getting changeups, but they're on the lower outer portion of the plate, and they might be dotted and or off, and I'm swinging at it, maybe it's not me swinging at it. Maybe it's not the pitch itself. Maybe it's the location that I'm swinging at. So maybe I need to adjust my eye a little bit and focus more on a certain spot for everything. So if I'm able to shrink my zone just a little bit more, that way I'm still on the fastball. That way, if I see a changeup out the hand that I usually would see as a good pitch to hit, but it's not, I might be able to lay off it a little bit more. And then when a changeup does come that is within that zone, I'm able to do damage with because I see it more clearly.
I've got to also ask you where the power came from. I mean, you're not a very big guy. In 2015, the year you got drafted, you hit 4 home runs in college in 56 games. But then, immediately your next year, 2016, your first full season in the minor leagues, you hit 14 home runs. You went from metal bat to wood bat. Obviously, you play more games. I don't know if anybody saw when you got drafted. I don't know if anybody saw you as a 30-30 guy. Some team might have thought that you could have hit for the average that you've hit. I'm sure teams saw you as a big league center fielder. I'm sure they saw the 30 stolen bases coming. I have a hard time believing that anybody that drafted you saw 30 home runs coming. Is that a result, Cedric, of some swing changes? Is it a result of approach changes? Is it a result of you just getting stronger and working your butt off in the weight room? Can you point to anything in particular that has kind of made this power come along for you when, that maybe wasn't necessarily a part of your game when you got drafted?
Yeah, I always first give credit to the man upstairs because, I think he blessed me with the ability to put in the work to help provide that power. It was just a matter of me finding it through trial and error and working on how to get more out of my swing naturally. But I do feel like that I always had a certain amount of pop to my swing, and it was just a matter of, again, me continuing to get stronger, of course. But at a certain point, it was me not missing my pitches that I know I can do damage to. And I think it really started to come around, like you said, in that low A season, where, of course, I'm playing a lot more games, but even with how you break down the number of games I played in the past, and you multiply that by 2, like, I still wouldn't have reached the 14 mark. And to kind of give more credit to just my left-handed swing in general, I think majority of the time my power came from my left-handed swing, and I'd have a few mixed in there on my right side. And for me to become a full-time left-handed hitter, I was going to potentially run into more home runs in general, being that I was on my stronger side.
I've got a couple quick questions for you, Cedric, to kind of end things, and hopefully these are just some kind of quick answers and have a little bit of fun at the end here. When you first got called up to the big leagues, who did you get tickets to come out and see you in your debut, if anybody?
Yeah, so when I got the call, this story is always funny because I just came off of having a stomach bug, so I literally didn't play for like 3 days because my stomach was torn to shreds, basically. And when I I got called into the office, and Ron Johnson, who was AAA manager at the time, he said, "Hey, how are you feeling?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I'm ready to go. I should be getting to play tomorrow." And he said, "Good, because you're going to the bigs." And I was like, "Wait, what?" I was like, Three days of not playing, and I'm going up to play in a big league game. It's like, oh, Jesus, 3 days felt like 3 weeks. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to feel when I first step up in there. And so I immediately called my folks, and so my mom, my dad, and my brother were able to come out along with my hitting instructor, who I was working with since I was like 15. And my sister wasn't able to make it. She was doing her own thing, and my grandma wasn't able to make it because she was just that nervous. I was like, okay. She didn't want to go simply because of her nerves. I was like, you're nervous? Okay, that's cool. But yeah, so it was a great time, and looking back on that day, it was obviously a great day. A fun moment to share with everybody.
I've talked to other guys who have said, guys that have played in the big leagues, who said they're much, much more nervous watching their kid play than they ever were playing. What was the biggest wow moment for you, or maybe your first wow moment in the big leagues when you got up there and you're like, holy cow, I'm here? Like, I'm sure there were guys that you played against that you idolized as a kid. Do you have a moment like that stands out to you?
Yeah, just because growing up in Georgia, being a Braves fan, never really got to see too many guys in Baltimore in general, but I definitely knew of Adam Jones, definitely knew of Chris Davis. So when I was able to meet those guys, even before my call up, that was definitely one of those wow moments for me. But I think the biggest wow moment was that I was more nervous on defense than I was hitting. And that stuck with me because I was like, I feel like I have more eyes on me standing out in center field than I do when I'm hitting, standing at the plate. And people were like, well, that's kind of weird. And I was like, well, if you think of it this way, if, let's say, my first at-bat, I strike out, it's not that big a deal. People strike out. It's a normal part of the game. But let's say you make an error out in center. And you hear like you hear a collective 50,000 people go, oh, like I think that kind of sticks with you a little more. And you did it on TV, so it's going to be brought back up at some point. So I think that was a fun moment for me to be like, wow, this is a crazy feeling.
How about of the parks that you visited so far besides Camden, which has been your favorite MLB park to visit?
Oh man, I feel like all of them have something about them that just really stands out. It's something about the lights that just makes the colors really pop. I know the first time I went out to Seattle, that was, I guess, the first and only time at this point. That was Really nice stadium. That's right, I've been there twice. Really nice stadium. Loved it. I like the dome concept of it where it's still outside, but you can just kind of pull, like an umbrella. You can just kind of pull it back when it's nice, and then you can kind of pull it over when it's raining, and you can still get the ball game going. Of course, in my own division, Fenway is a beautiful park. Yankee Stadium is a beautiful park. As nice as those ballparks are, it feels like the people are like standing right on top of you when you're out there.
Really? So
it makes it feel a little smaller, but there's still amazing parks that have great energy out there.
Who's a pitcher that you'll be okay if you don't see him again?
Well, I got my list, but I know I'm going to see him again, so that's not the issue. But, yeah, so I think it's just more of a comfort level. Like, it's not that I don't have the ability to hit them. They just, for some reason, have a way of making you uncomfortable in the box. And of course, like the Chris Sales of the world who, throw at a 3/4 almost submarine angle, and he's stepping towards me, throwing 97. I'm like, hey, man, this is a little too much for my eyes to handle right now. Like, I just want to make sure that you get this thing on the plate, which, of course, he does. Like, he's been doing it for a long time now. But past that, yeah, there aren't too many guys that I'm just like, I'd be happy if I never faced them.
Must be nice. Must be nice to be that good. You've had a lot of really cool things happen to you already in your young career, including starting the All-Star game in center field. Can you give me the coolest moment that you have experienced so far as a big leaguer, if you can pick one moment?
Yeah, so most people would think that it's the All-Star game. Most people would think it was the home run robbery at the end of the year, which was awesome. But the moment that sticks out to me the most was the T-shirt night that I had. So it was a night where they were handing out free T-shirts with Mullins on the back of them. I was like, this is crazy. This is awesome. I can't wait for people to come out. We're going to have a great game. Little did I know that I ended up hitting 2 home runs that night and getting my first curtain call. And I was like, wow. Like, so that's what that feels and looks like. That's pretty crazy because if like they're chanting your name, I've never been one to do the hoorah and all that, but going out there and it felt like I was out there for 30 seconds, and I look at the video and it was 5. So it was just a moment that I was really able to slow down and take all in. But I think that's my number one.
That's amazing. Last question for you, Cedric. You guys, the Baltimore Orioles organization has a lot of dudes coming up. They got some really good name guys coming up. When do the Orioles make the playoffs? I'll put you on the spot there.
It's not a tough one to answer, but it's a tough one to answer because I feel like there's going to be some camaraderie that needs to happen along with the guys that are coming up. We got to continue to build each other's confidence to go out there and compete every single day, and we got to maintain that for an entire season. We had moments even this year where it was like, this is us at our best. We need to be able to stick with that, and it would turn right around and we'd have a 7+ game losing streak, and a lot of games would be close, but it was just those losses kept pounding away at us, and I think our confidence as a whole continued to falter because of it. So I do think that some guys, including myself, stepping up and taking that leadership role to build a winning mindset, and I know we have a winning mindset now, but to really stick it and have that approach every single night when we go out there, that nothing is going to beat us, and when we have the lead, we're going to keep it. So just continuing to have that mindset and pursuing greatness, I think we're closer than most people think.
This is Cedric Mullins, everybody, an all-star center fielder, the all-star center fielder for the Baltimore Orioles, and someone who I'm so glad to reconnect with. Cedric, I certainly appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. I know you're a busy guy this offseason. You have a lot of people asking you to go a lot of different directions, but you taking the time to be on this podcast is a huge compliment to me and the Figured Out Baseball website. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Appreciate it.